Welcome readers to the inaugural episode of Books with a View, a YouTube channel where I'll talk about books while you look at pretty views. Today we'll be going over Suzanne Collins' The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which takes place partially in Appalachia. Well, a dystopian version of Appalachia, so I ventured to southwestern Virginia to give you some views of an Appalachian sunset against the Blue Ridge Mountains. Enjoy. Now, for the book of the hour. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, or BOSAS as I'll call it from here on out, kidding, no one wants to hear that, is a prequel to the very popular Hunger Games series by Suzanne Collins. In that series, the main antagonist was the vicious leader of the Capitol named President Coriolanus Snow. In this book, Collins goes with the thought experiment, I wonder what Coriolanus was like when he was a hunky teenager. That's right, the novel centers around the villain's final year in high school, where he and a select group of classmates are responsible for being mentors in the Hunger Games. Now make no mistake, this story is not about the birth of the Hunger Games themselves. The games are in their 10th year, so still in their relative infancy, and the general populace is sickened by the idea that children from all of the 12 districts are rounded up and forced to fight to the death in an arena. Not many people watch them in the capital, and no one seems to watch them in the districts, due to most people in the districts living in poverty without televisions. Coriolanus is paired with the female tribute from District 12, which should sound very familiar to readers of the original trilogy, since about 65 chronological years later in Panem, Katniss Everdeen will be the female tribute from the same district. In Songbirds and Snakes, the tribute is named Lucy Gray Baird, and Coriolanus is instantly charmed by her, although still pretty dubious that she actually has a shot at winning the games. Turns out she's a member of a group of traveling musicians called the Covey, and she's a talented singer, which she proves by hijacking the District 12 reaping ceremony by singing a song. This captivates the people inside the Capitol and gives Coriolanus an idea. If he can harness her popularity, he can help her survive the Hunger Games. The rest of the story goes through the ups and downs of their mentor-tribute relationship, and even examines what their relationship is like once the strictures of the games are officially gone. I found myself liking Coriolanus, and it wasn't really until midway through the novel when I realized that everything he did was selfish, and I probably shouldn't be on his side. As a reader, you're kind of trapped in his head, so you root for him when small victories happen, like when he gets called on in class and gives a great answer, or when he's able to bring home food to a starving family. More on that later. It's only when the bigger challenges crop up for him that the moral lines start to blur. For instance, Coriolanus has a classmate named Sejanus Plinth, who, for my money, is a well-rounded character. Besides Coriolanus and Lucy Gray, he's the third most important character. He's originally from the districts, but his parents are nouveau riche arms dealers. They don't really fit in with the snooty capital denizens and their addiction to status and fashion. Coriolanus and his family are broke, starving, and even they think they're above the Plinths. In class, Sejanus keeps bringing up basic moral arguments like, should we be doing these Hunger Games at all? Aren't they kind of inherently cruel? Collins' writing works well with his character because Coriolanus finds Sejanus irritating, and she writes the whiny plinth boy just annoying enough for you to sympathize with Coriolanus' opinion of him. Instead of trying to disrupt the status quo, Collins gets the reader irritated at the thought that Sejanus doesn't just accept the reality of the games. He should stop making things so difficult and eat his ma's delicious-sounding sausage rolls. Coriolanus has a solid family unit at home. His cousin Tigris and his grandmother, who he and Tigris affectionately call the Grandmam. They were once a great house and still live in an elegant apartment building, but after Coriolanus' parents died, the family quickly became destitute. The Grandmam became a little senile, but she still finds meaning in tending to her rose garden. The family has sold all their fancy possessions and subsists mostly on unappetizing scraps. The situation is desperate, and I found it pretty effective in terms of putting the reader on Coriolanus' side. It gives his time at school life or death stakes. If he's successful at being a mentor, he'll get a scholarship to college, and then his family won't have to worry about their finances. If he's unsuccessful, then the family will fall even further into poverty. Also, I didn't realize this until I looked it up after reading the whole book, but Tigris is an old cat lady at the end of Mockingjay. It's a weird connection. A big difference between this novel and the Hunger Games proper is that the majority of Songbirds and Snakes takes place inside a control room. The book's story takes place from Coriolanus' perspective, so despite one Sejanus-triggered trip into the arena, the protagonist is safe and sound while the games occur. It's a departure to be sure. I imagine a lot of the enjoyment of the original trilogy comes from the excitement and thrills that take place when Katniss, and by extension the reader, is trapped in a deadly arena. It also shouldn't be understated how much fun Collins must have devising the various teenager killing challenges in the previous books. A series high point is the delightfully complex rules of the tropical arena and catching fire. Whether Katniss is evading tracker jackers or outsmarting mutations, I think I'm saying that right, the reader is involved with her strategies for survival. In Songbirds and Snakes, Collins doesn't give us Lucy Gray's perspective inside the arena. She's not a powerful tribute and, as a result, disappears for a good chunk of the novel by hiding in the subterranean parts of the arena. It's a little counterintuitive to deny the audience the thrills they must expect from a Hunger Games book, but I suppose you get the thrill of completing a school project instead. Overall, choosing to limit the reader to a relatively safe perspective gives the reader an impression of someone telling you an exciting story instead of actually living through one. Sejanus and Coriolanus' advisor, Dr. Gall, is great. She strikes a terrific balance between threatening and seductive. There's a gruesome section in the middle of the book where Dr. Gall tricks a student to injure herself by sticking her hand into a terrarium filled with neon snakes. The snakes of course bite her, and Dr. Gall laughs and laughs and laughs and laughs. She loves to laugh. She delights in posing moral quandaries to all her students and serves as a driving force for setting Coriolanus on his dark path to villainhood. If Coriolanus Snow is Darth Vader, Dr. Gall is certainly the Emperor. Songbirds and Snakes is broken into 3 parts. Part 1, The Mentor, details Coriolanus meeting Lucy Gray and attempting to strategize about the games. This part mainly sets up their relationship. There's not really any hints at their future relationship, mostly because Coriolanus thinks she's doomed due to her lack of physical strength. Lucy Gray is a delight in this section. She's the songbird of the title, due to her charming habit of bursting into song. Some people may skip over the parts of fantasy novels that are italicized, but I found myself luxuriating in the lyrics, just because I could so clearly picture Lucy Gray singing them. She's a pure character with a good sense of humor, and serves the novel well by giving you a person to care about when we get to Part 2, The Prize. The prize that the title refers to could definitely refer to many things, but I think it's primarily about the plinth prize. Basically, after Sejanus royally screws up, his father offers a hefty scholarship to stay in the school's good graces. The mentor of whoever wins the Hunger Games will get a full ride to college. This ups the stakes for Coriolanus and also makes him more tempted to bend the rules. Overall, I didn't find too much originality in these first 2 parts of the novel. They play pretty similarly to her previous novels, except the games themselves aren't as exciting since, as a reader, it feels like you're watching a football game at home instead of playing on the field. Collins is still a decent writer though, so I managed to power through until I made it to Part 3, The Peacekeeper, in which Coriolanus is forced to become a peacekeeper. I'll admit that I didn't see this plot twist coming, but I do consider it to be the most interesting part of the book. Coriolanus finds himself outside his element, thrown out of high society into the poverty-ridden environs of District 12. There's a fair amount of romance between him and Lucy Gray, which I thought was nicely layered. Since she's not a tribute anymore, it wasn't entirely clear to what extent she actually liked Coriolanus versus how much she was playing him for her own purposes. I definitely read her as much more cynical than she outwardly appeared, and was only professing love for Coriolanus to wring every last drop of usefulness out of him. This might not be what Collins intended when writing it, but I think it's definitely there if you want to look for it. And now we get to the ending, which is gloriously ambiguous in regards to Lucy Gray's overall motivation and state of mind. Coriolanus is bitten by a snake, seemingly led there by Lucy Gray. Although it ends up not being a venomous snake, Lucy Gray never responds to Coriolanus' cries for her. It's a good part of the book to be stuck inside Coriolanus' head, because Collins keeps us from knowing exactly what Lucy Gray is up to. I thought this decision was wise and made her a far more interesting character because you can read into her actions, or more importantly, non-actions. The things she did and didn't do. In the moment, Coriolanus thinks his life is being threatened, but he was never in any real danger. Was it Lucy Gray's intent just to scare him? We'll never really know, and that's the best way Collins could have ended the book. But it's not quite the end. The epilogue has an interesting thematic twist. After he abandons all his mother's possessions, he only retains his father's compass. The main character of the book stops being Coriolanus and, in Collins' prose, simply becomes Snow. Overall, I thought The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes was a worthy addition to the Hunger Games canon. I can't really imagine any ardent fan of the series absolutely hating this installment. The ending kind of wraps things up with a great sense of ambiguity in regards to Coriolanus and Lucy Gray's relationship, so I hope that Collins doesn't make this the first part of a Coriolanus trilogy, although I could see that happening. I think it works pretty well just as one book. I hear they're making a movie, so right now, if you'll indulge me, I'm just going to help out the producers and Dreamcast it right here. For Coriolanus Snow, I submit Jaden Martell, who was so good at playing a toxic runt in Knives Out. For Lucy Gray Baird, I'll cast Amelia Jones. She has a beautiful singing voice in Coda, and she's charming as hell. For Sejanus Plinth, how about Noah Jupe, who's great as a morally challenged youth in Suburbicon. For Dr. Gall, how about Margot Martindale? You can pick out a lot of roles from her resume, but I'd love it if she brought her energy from Justified to Gall. For Tigress, I'd cast Mackenzie Davis, who matches the physical description of Tigress pretty perfectly. She's just one of my favorite actresses right now. If you haven't seen it, *Halt and Catch Fire* is one of the best shows of the last decade. And Angela Lansbury would of course play the Grand Mam. Recently she was great at playing the Balloon Lady in Mary Poppins Returns, but it would be great to see her play something with some drama. Hollywood executives, I've done your work for you, now all you have to do is film it. And that's all I have for you, bibliophiles. So thank you for watching. If you liked what you heard, subscribe for more book reviews in the future, like the video, and comment if there are any novels in particular you'd like me to read. And, as always, snow lands on top.